Welcome to the third day of the conference. I see that the faces are just like, as we go forward, it's just getting more and more, wondered, around like the content that are coming in this amazing conference. So today I'm actually addressing what was the chemically induced experience of Zoroastrian in Iran, in the past between 2,500 to around like 1,500 years ago. And one of my main, there are two basically main factor for me that this is very close to my heart. One is actually we are working on a drug development company on new solutions for mental wellness diseases. And the reason for that is actually I have had two very close family members of mine who have been suffering from mental disorders, one from PTSD and the other one from addiction. So I have really seen very closely the suffering of my loved one, and that has been, one of the main reasons for me just to, between being in different the industries, actually land on mental wellness now. So the second reason is actually a more pragmatic reason about me as an Iranian with the situation of the whole Middle East and how things are going in that region. I'm really looking for a very pragmatic solution as basically as a next solution that can just from COVID and from what's happening in Ukraine, we see that we're all connected, and this part of the world is going to impact the peace in every part of the world. So I'm really hopeful that this amazing, group of minds that are here can contribute to more pragmatic solutions, for our future. So with that, so I'm going to take you to Iran. So the first thing that comes to your mind about Iran is Ayatollahs, or probably the nuclear power, or just anti-America, anti-West, and mostly just the battle between, West and Iran and the nuclear deal, etc. But I want to just take this not as the image of Iran from you, just take this out, and I want to take you to the real Iran, which the real Iran is the land of beauty, is the land of feminine, is the land of poetry, is the land of architecture. As you see from all the colors, this is the real Iran. The real Iran is the land that there's so many people living in it. It's been living in peace for many years. But in the past 40 years, they haven't been very lucky with what's going on. So, but what was the magic? What was the magic that was lost about this land? And today I'm going to actually take you through that. So this is the outline of my presentation. I'm taking you through the shamanism background in Iran, in that Iranian plateau. Then I introduce you to Zoroastra, who was the prophet of the Zoroastrian, and then what was his philosophy, as well as what was the whole thing about the chemically induced experience of a Zoroastrian priest. And then I have a comparison between the drink of truth in Mesoamerica as well as what was happening in Iran, and then take you through a neurochemistry and psychopharmacology analysis of these potions or these intoxicants. So very quickly through the history of Iran, just to fresh your mind, this is starting there are three main glorious time in Iran in which the empire, the Persian Empire was built on. Was one during the Achaemenid time, Sasanian time, and then after Islam, it was the Safavid time. Some of the big, events that are probably you're familiar with is the Cyrus, conquest of Babylon, Alexander, which was the end of the Achaemenid time, as well as the Arab conquest. This is actually where, the Sassanid, as a Zoroastrian state, religion actually ends, and then after Arab conquest, we get into the Islamic Iran for about 1500 now. So some of the registration for you might be into I'm sure you know Rumi and Hafez. So the creation, the poetry of this state of mind is related to something between 1,000 to 1,500 after Christ. So but let's say if Zoroaster was about 1,500 to around 1,000 years BC. So what was happening before Zoroaster? So before Zoroaster in Iran, they were paganism as well as the shamanism. So pagans were people living in Iran before the Indo-Iranian actually moved to Iran. So they were like mostly like cattle runners, they were just living in just small groups. And what they were doing was they were personifying, like the bigger powers like water or sun, and then they were just worshiping those. And as part of their devotion to those, they were just sacrificing animals. So sacrifice of animal to these deities, has been part of paganism. And then there's a sign of shamanism in Iran, which like the most account is actually most valid account is actually about Avesta, which is the holy book of Zoroastrian, which the first referral is actually about using of intoxicant. The second one is actually using basically the idea of a double soul. And double soul is actually when you live in this life, you have a double in the divine world, and then the connection between these two is happening in an infinite time. So Zoroastrian actually had that. So there are also other referrals, about like use of, exactly like Mesoamerica, use of the feathers, like just getting out of body, trembling, the sense of trembling to get out of body. As well as, there are reports and accounts about the warriors taking psychoactives, as a battle fury, when they were going to the war. As well as the last one is just like we were close to Siberia, which there's a big shamanism around Siberia. So whoever is into shamanism knows Mircea, Eliade. So this is actually what he says. The magical religious value of intoxication for achieving ecstasy is of Iranian origin. So with that, I want to introduce you to Zoroaster. So Zoroaster was a philosopher, like living between 1500 to about 1000 years ago, which is known actually as a reformer who actually came up with a philosophy, who actually built his philosophy on top of paganism and shamanism. So this is a religion that is built upon, like very indigenous practices. And based on that, he comes up actually with this philosophy of the freedom of the choice, which is very interesting, that there is a good, there is basically, there is dualism, there is good and there is bad, and then you choose like which direction you want to go. And so he's known as an ecstatic and a philosopher that is basically combined in one person. And what was his reform about? He actually established the first monotheistic religion before any of the Abrahamic, and this is not an Abrahamic religion. This is like about at least 500 to about 1500 years before Abrahamic religions. And there's reform was actually coming around two areas. There were so many sacrifices, with the paganism, around like just basically sacrificing of animals, for the gods, different gods. So he was against that. So he wanted just like to stop or reduce this number of sacrifices for the value of the animals. And the second part was actually for the use of intoxicants, because the use of intoxicants has been, very widely used by sorcerers as well as magicians, and people who are not they call it not the right club. So he was against that because, and the whole, I'm going to take you through like some of the fundamentals of his philosophy, but the religion that he built is called Mazda Yasna. So if you know, like the Zoroastrians are people who are related to Zoroaster, but Mazda Yasna means, like Yasna means worship, Mazda means like the mind. So basically this is the religion of the worshiping of the mind. So that is why probably Nietzsche, which is a very famous philosopher, actually chooses Zoroastra as, like among all this prophet, as a fundamental philosopher that you can really rely on his philosophy today. And I really I'm sure like Monica's book was about Thales Spoke, the plan. So this is the Thales Spoke Zoroastra, the real book of Zarathustra. So what was his philosophy? So this is, if whoever of you who have Iranian friends, like you probably have seen this sign. So this is Faravahar sign, like you put it as a necklace. But what is Faravahar sign? Faravahar is actually your double in the realm of, like in the other realm, in the realm of divine. So each of us have a Faravahar in the other realms, and the life is going, for us, is just like going toward your Faravahar, just by elevating yourself toward your higher self. So this is the philosophy. And so there is they call it a mēnôg or mēnôg, which is basically ma'na in Farsi, which is exactly, the divine. And there is Gâthâ, which is like your materialistic life. And the whole life is happening between these two. But something very interesting about this philosophy is that contrary to most of the other philosophies that are mostly around the value of the soul, Zoroastrians, everything is about the value of the mind. So even the translation of Orvan or Ravan in Farsi means psyche. So the psychology is Ravan Shanasi, which is actually the whole fundamental is about like having a better mind. It's not about like something that you're getting rewarded in the next realm. It's just you have to have the good mind, which is called Vahumana. And then with the good mind, there are these three principles that if you go to any Zoroastrian temple, you see these three principles: the good deeds, the good words, and the good thoughts. And the life is based on these three. And it's a very simple philosophy and very deep actually. So as you see, like the right side is coming from Persepolis. The left side is actually coming from a Zoroastrian fire temple in Yazd and in Iran. So, and this is basically the one word that you see on most of them, which is that there is only one way, and that's the way of truth. So this is a philosophy of mind that is very related to having ethics. It's not really about the soul. This is because I am not Zoroastrian. I'm actually exploring it more, specifically with the current situation of the world, and I'm learning more and more about like how important it is, specifically when you come to the world of like the mental wellness. And another interesting point is that they are not giving much value to the world of a spirit as the spiritual world. So a spiritual world is not more; it doesn't have more value. Like the spiritual world and the materialistic world are the same. What is value is the quality of the state of your mind, that you move toward one of them, toward your divine soul. So with that, there are reports that Zoroastra actually was given by Ahura Mazda, which is the highest wisdom. So through this monotheistic philosophy, there is this highest wisdom that he introduced as Ahura Mazda, which is exactly around, again, the highest mind. And so the story is like he was introduced by the Ahura Mazda to take this potion, and then he has this view of the mēnôg, or view of the divine, that he can see like the life after the death. And so home, which is equivalent to soma or homa or soma, is exactly like this. They're the same thing, but I'm talking about the context of Iran, which the specific meaning of the word is to press out. So the press out, it shows that it most probably has been an extract, that you're just taking it out of a plant. So this is the liquid omniscient wisdom brought by Ahura Mazda to Zoroaster. So he immediately knows everything. So this is a very interesting part. And like when we go forward, I'll share with you what is the impact of the chemical actually. And like the whole idea about die before you die, it's been practiced by many religion. It's been cited in Baron Moresco. Lots of Rumi's poem actually is about this experience. So now I want to take you to the Gâthâ, which is basically this is the part of the old book that is related to Zoroaster. And then the rest of the texts which are coming later are actually coming, with the other priests later on. But this is the part that are directly, coming from Zoroaster. So the direct referral to any intoxication, they're only coming in two areas. First of all, half of Gâthâ or the most of Gâthâ is lost. This is the only part that we have today. So the reference is like the first part is talking about Darusha. Darusha is burning something to basically just repel evil, or to just put away evil. But the second account is actually the referral of Zoroaster is about the filthiness of this intoxicant. So, which is not a good thing, So the whole point about this, and just up to this point, that's the reason that if you talk to any Zoroastrian today, they just denounce use of any intoxication, because they believe that their prophet actually denounced use of any intoxicant. So they rely on this, and they are not aware of any intoxicants. But there are other part of Avesta that are basically, they're called, these are different hymns, like Yasna 9 and 9 to 11, 9, 10, 11, that the referral to home or homa is actually, as you see this, it's something that it provokes madu, or madu in Farsi means like when you get intoxicated, you get out of your mind. The other part is just like, it was not basically just there is no direct, relation between the botanical, what was the source of the botanical. So it's just like, it says that if there have been stems or stalks or twigs of some plant, and the color of the juice actually is called zarine or zari, which is between the yellow and green. And so it was a good scent, when they're burning, it was using as a good scent. It had medicinal properties, and it was growing in the mountainous area. So these are like the referral to this plant. But again, like contrary to the referral of Zoroastra in the main part of Gâthâ, like this is like, I just brought this for you, just as a reference on how they're referring to haoma. I call down haoma, O yellow haoma, your intoxicating power, strength, victoriousness, ability to grant health, curativeness, prosperity, growth, force for the entire body, complete knowledge. And I call down this that I may go among the beings, overcoming hostility and defeating the lie. So this is the intoxicant that was coming to bring the truth for you, to bring the wellness for you. And that has been, what is the referral of the haoma in the old text. So with that, again, I want to take you to the magic. And what was the magic of Persia is actually in the hands of the Magi. So this is where the Magi or the mēnôg are coming. So they had the magic of Persia that apparently is lost. So Magi or mēnôg were these words, I'm sure you have heard it from the three wise men who brought from the east, the gift to the Jesus. And one of them was Iranian, one of them was Arab, one of them I think was Indian. And actually the etymology of the word of magic comes from Magi, which means a Zoroastrian priests, And later on this went to become part of the occult culture, and then the word magic came out of Magi. So with that, I want to take you through the three stories, that's documented, these are like outwardly journeys of Zoroastrian priests, that they were intoxicated. So the first one is actually the revelation of Zoroastra. So in the revelation of Zoroastra, he is given haoma by Ahura Mazda. So there is referral that he was out of his body for 7 days and nights after just drinking this liquid omniscient wisdom. So he immediately has the wisdom. And then after 7 days, like when he sees the world of divine, he sees the world after death. So this is part of Vahman Yash, which is one of the Pahlavi texts of Zoroastrian. He says that I saw things in pleasant Ahura Mazda's created dream. I have not yet recovered from the dream. So he is in this dream-like state, which this is the referral to his experience. So the second part, it goes actually beyond use of the use of the intoxicant by the priest, which Zoroaster actually takes the potion to the king or the ruler of his time, Vishtasp, and then he actually invites him to his principle, his philosophy, and then he introduces him to this potion, which the potion is called the mēnôg of Vishtasp. And the mēnôg of Vishtasp, is defined as it's either a wine and hembane, or it's basically they call it a wine and mēnôg, but before 12th century, mēnôg in Iran has been hembane, black hembane. Or it's a combination of haoma and mēnôg. So he has this 3 days out of body experience. They're referring to, so he sees again the world of divine, the world after death. And so there is this referral to starred or stirred, which this means that you just spread out, just like the feeling of being sprawled, just like expanded all of a sudden. And that Vishtas, when he's back, he referred, to his experience as that. But the most interesting story is actually an 8,000 words book of Zoroastrian. It's called the Arda Viraz Namag. So if you search it, it's actually Namag is like Name, leather. So it's the leather of Arda Viraz, and Arda means a righteous. So this is a man. He was not a priest. So this is a righteous man who was respected by everybody. And then so he is getting intoxicated in a very like in a setting which is like a very close to the today's setting that we define for any psychedelics. It's very interesting. I go through this. But the reason for that is the story starts like this. So after the Archimedes, and then Alexander, the situation of the mind of people was, so bad. Like they had lost their religion, they had lost the trust in each other. And then the priests, they came out and they realized that like people are not getting inspired by religion anymore. So they don't believe in that. And they decide to basically find someone to send it to the other world to validate that the liturgies that they take, the ritual that they take are the right rituals. And then they come back and then go through everything. So the process of choosing is very interesting. Like he is actually basically they invite everybody to come to a fire temple in Iran, which is kind of lost now. It's called Farbag. It was close to Fars. This is the fire temple of the priests. There were different castes in Iran. And then they invite everybody. The priest, they ask him to do, basically they choose like several people. Among those, they choose 7 people. Among those, they choose finally to one person. So that one person comes out and says, I don't want to take this. This is too much. This is an ordeal. And then again, they say that if you are righteous, you should not have any problem. Just you go and you come back. And then his 7 sisters, which was his 7 wives, they come and complain and say, like we are hurting him. He's gonna die. We don't want him to be gone. And then they say that again. If he is right, he would come back. And then he accepts to take the medicine. And so before that, he just like goes, takes some bread, he just prepares himself. And then this is the real set and setting. So he goes through an initiation, he set, his intention, and then he basically goes and takes the intoxication is the Vishtaspian mang, which what Vishtas took. So this is his journey, and this is exactly like what the Divine Comedy, of Dante is. This is about 1500 years like before Dante, and as you see, like he basically this is the moment that he does the initiation, and like he takes and then the previous slide was like where is the bed that he takes the potion. He's like again 7 days out of body, and then he comes out. He see his like the picture in the middle. He see his double, and then he would be welcomed by 2. Like you see, like there are 2 people on the back, which are the angels who are just like taking him through this world. And then he see Ahura Mazda, which is is in gold color clothes here, and basically goes through heaven, and then like any other account that like hell is always like 5 times more. The rest of the book is always about hell, and what if you do anything wrong, like there are all kinds of, for example, the one on the corner bottom is just like he's like see that like if somebody has done something bad, like he sees like his double, which is like a dark person, and that's the account. And then like he comes back and then he scripts everything. So basically the whole book is about his journey through the hell and heaven. So with that, I want to take you back to where are Zoroastrian today. The Zoroastrians are today, after Islam, like most of them, from the fear of like just a conversion to Islam, they left Iran. Like the big group of Zoroastrian, they moved to India, Gujarat, and they're called, the Parsi Zoroastrian. And a small group of them, they're staying in Iran, still they call them Irani Zoroastrians, which is about only like 20,000 people, mostly living in Yazd and Kerman. And there are like other people around the world, but like the number is about 100 to about 200,000 people. So if you talk to any Zoroastrian, there's no relation association to, nobody talks about any intoxicant, even they don't know about it. This is a lost knowledge, or even they denounce it, like they are not referring themselves to that. And they actually have a ritual, it's called Yasna Rite, which through the ritual, they were taking this intoxicant. And the intoxicant, it was mostly to test the new priests. So like the previous priests, they were just like, a priest prepares this potion, and then the next priest, who's Zotar, comes take this in assembly of 6 other priests for them to see that if he really has the capacity of being a right person to become a priest or not. But this ritual hasn't been conducted for many years now. Like the last one in Iran was actually 1966 in Sharifabad of Yazd, and they're rarely like hosting it in India now. But why, if this was an intoxicant of immortality and truth, why was it lost? The main reason for that is that because the knowledge was kept within the caste, like there were very limited people know about this, and it was mostly because of, again, the bad club, when Zoroaster came and said, like, he didn't want to just open it, towards sorcery, and magician, any bad players to be involved with that. The other reason is that, like, even during the Sassanid time, the Zoroastrians, they were the state religion. So as a state religion, they didn't want to be, again, related to an intoxicant as the base of their fundamental of their philosophy. And mostly the last one, after the invasion of Islam, they didn't want to be related again, like in front of Muslims. They didn't want to be related again as sorcerers or as magicians, that they were using the intoxicants. So because of that, they replaced basically the main compound of haoma is lost. There's still a haoma that is used by Zoroastrians, but it's not intoxicating anymore. And then as it seems today, like nobody knows what it is. So here I want to actually compare two of the haoma and one of the other immortality of or drink of immortality and truth, which is ayahuasca. So these are coming around kind of the same time, like ayahuasca, Yahé, about 900 BC, and like haoma is talking about 1200 to about 1000 BC. So they were both intoxicating, they were both extract. So the botanical identity of Yahé is actually Banistriopsis capi, and Psychoderia viridis, and there are other additives too. We don't know about haoma. This is very interesting. This psychological experience. This is the refined. Like I was actually talking to get the validation of the sonaderos, which is like referring as dream-like. So you are in the state of having connection to your subconscious or download from your subconscious. And then again the equivalent, which is a starred, which I refer to, which means like spreading out. The setting for both of them was in a ritual setting. It was never open to people. On the Mesoamerican day, like a shaman can take it to a non-shaman through an initiation, but like in the account of Zoroastrian, there was no like direct use of any of these intoxicant by regular, like normal people. And the purpose, like for both, at least the first two purposes, is the confrontation of death, intensified awareness of mortality, and experiencing the supernatural. And again, in the Zoroastrian account, there are two more, which is validating the truth of the religion and just the testing of the new priest, or the righteousness of the new priest. So this was an ordeal, in Zoroastrian principle. So with that, I want to take you on what was haoma. So when I started working on this, I didn't know that I'm actually registering myself into 70 years of research and speculation, which so many people have come almost like they've talked about almost any plants that was soma, and just even going through them and the reasoning took me a lot of time. But I decided to focus on haoma rather than soma, first of all, because I'm an Iranian and I could have access to most of the text. But as an Iranian, I can't read the old Avestan text. I can't read the Pahlavi text. I can only read the new Persian text. So for that, I really need a linguist to work with me. But I took actually three accounts of what is mostly known to be haoma or soma. So one from a deliriant, which they're saying that is Amanita Muscaria. The second one is stimulant, which they're referring to as ephedra. And the third one is an oneropheric, which is actually a dream-like compound that creates dream-like for you. So let's go through Amanita Muscaria. So this is, for most of you who knows about this came from Gordon Wasson, specifically after him bringing the psilocybin mushroom from Mexico, to America. Like he was looking for other sources of, botanicals around the world, and then he was very registered like to mushrooms, and basically these are the reasoning for him that. Mostly he was thinking that, and his account is mostly about India, not Iran. So so there is no Amanita Muscaria in the flora of Iran. So this is the easy no to Amanita Muscaria not to be haoma, But let's say if it was in India, like his account is actually related to the Siberian experiences, which was, the ecstasy of like the shamans who are drinking, Amanita Muscaria, and then the account that is related to drinking of the urine of the person who has, taken this, because the main compound in Amanita Muscaria is actually ibotenic acid. And ibotenic acid and muscimol, muscarine, these are the three main intoxicating compounds. The muscarine concentration is very low. This is the most toxic molecule. The ibotenic acid, it just gets metabolized to become muscimol. But again, almost about 95% of the ibotenic acid would be, excreted without metabolization. That's why, the drink of urine of the person is actually like a very rich source of ibotenic acid. So he introduced it as a supreme infusion of all time, or what induces ecstasy, but there are so many, objections about this. The first reason is that this was a delirium. So if these accounts of Magi was just they coming back and they go through every detail of their dream, so under a delirium, you just forget everything. You have no knowledge of like what you went through to have, the memory to come back and then basically write that down. So this is the main reason that this was a delirium and this was not probably the source of haoma. But beside that, I'm actually getting back to Terence McKenna's book, that he actually grills Gordon Wasson that he knew that it was not Amanita Muscaria, but he is still pushed to publish the book because he had to spend a lot of time on that. So if you go through the Food of the Gods, so Terence has his letter, exchange letter with Gordon Wasson about soma, and other reasons like if it was a mushroom, they didn't need to just press it out; they could just easily take this, and it was not an incense. So as part of the work that we are doing as part of our company is just we are going through the receptor bindings of the active compounds of these intoxicants to see what is the effect, the pharmacodynamic of these compounds on our body. So on this, I'm not sure if my laser point is working or not, but so the main receptors that are getting involved are GABA A receptors with muscimol, as well as some of the glutamate receptors. That these are they put you in an analgesic, kind of like state of mind. But GABA receptors are mostly these are antagonists. What they do is that they inhibit the sensory of your CNS system. And this is one area. And then the glutamate, I guess the relation might be mostly about the memory on how you remember things. And again, this is the ibotenic acid contribution comes as an antagonist. So the second plant is actually ephedra. Ephedra is a stimulant. So in Iran today, ephedra is known as haoma. So they just go and if you just ask people, this is known as haoma. So people, they go to desert and there are accounts that they're saying that the Iranian Zoroastrian, they collect this and they send them to Parsi Zoroastrian because they are not growing in the flora of India. So as part of yasna rite is basically they are kind of pressing out ephedra and pomegranate twig, and this is what they take as haoma today. And it's very, again, abundant in the flora of Iran. But again, what are the doubts about this? One is that this is a stimulant. There is no dream-like state under ephedra. The second part is that it actually averts sleep. It makes you very alert under this stimulant. The other part, which is very interesting, is that the extraction doesn't come out from pressing out. You really have to boil this to free the alkaloids. And ephedra was never sanctified, and it doesn't have a good sense. But again, back to what are the active compounds? Ephedrine is the active compound, which is very similar to MDMA. So it's would you go to a dream-like state if you take MDMA? So the answer is no. So as you see here, they're both amphetamines, and here I'm actually comparing how ephedra and the effect of ephedra and MDMA is on different serotonergic, dopaminergic, adrenergic. You see they're mostly affecting on the adrenergic receptors. What is missing is that ephedrine doesn't bind to 5-HT2A and 5-HT2C, Again, what is different from ephedra from MDMA is that like ephedra is binding to your opioid receptors too. So that's why it's addictive, versus the MDMA. So but the third account is actually Pegonum harmala. And Pegonum harmala is the most interesting one because among these three plants, Pegonum harmala, or Syrian rue, or Iranian rue, or wild rue, this is the plant that stayed in every Iranian houses until today. Like regardless of if they're Zoroastrian or if you're like Muslim, like we all burn this today, as part of New Year, as part of new marriages, in different events. So we have this as a sacred plant. And the name actually calls it from espanta or svanta, or in Farsi they call it esfand. So it means that possessing productive numinous power. So it's a sacred plant in Iran. And the whole research actually comes from David Flattery and Martin Schwartz from 1981, which this is a very different analysis of the whole botanical idea of this haoma. And the reason is that because David actually lived in Iran for 3 years from 1960 to 1963, and he traveled the whole Iran, during that time. And then he has combined his book with the work of a linguist, which is Martin Schwartz, who actually has gone through all the Avestan texts, and then translated those and kind of like validated, and the work is still going on. This is very interesting. I'll share with you a little bit further. And again, they also very closely has worked with Claudio Naranjo, who was a psychotherapist who used beta carbolines for psychotherapy. So let's look into the chemistry of the active compounds of Pegonum harmala, which are beta carbolines. So in our company, we have worked on beta carbolines for about a year. It's a very interesting area. So this is the extract that we are done in our own lab. So the main compounds are harmine, harmaline, and tetrahydroharmine. For most of you who are familiar with ayahuasca, so the active compound of ayahuasca is mostly tetrahydroharmine and harmine and a little bit of harmaline. But contrary to that, in Pegonum harmala, you have a higher value of harmaline. So it's about, like you see, this is about 5.6. This is the highest value of the compound. And then we have harmine. It's a very little amount of tetrahydroharmine. So if somebody's taking the seeds, so this is, let's say, in an ayahuasca setting, so this is one of the areas that they have a different experience from using Gâthâ or Banistriopsis. The other thing is that, specifically when it comes to, like Banistriopsis, ecological problems, so there's 5 times more alkaloid in Pegonum harmala than Banistriopsis. So this is another source that we can just use these natural compounds or beta carbolines rather than using Banistriopsis. And getting tetrahydroharmine from harmine is a very simple reaction. So on the right side, like you see, again, this is the relation to zarine or yellow. You see, this is harmaline. The color of harmaline is just like gold yellow. This is the pure harmaline, and harmine is kind of like white ivy. So with that, I want to take you through the neuropsychopharmacology of harmine and harmaline. So these compounds are mostly known as monoamine oxidase inhibitors, which means that they are, if you have serotonin, released in your body, the serotonin after a while it gets metabolized, and it breaks. So they basically inhibit the digestion, the metabolization of your serotonin. So that's why they alone have an impact, a hallucinogenic impact. But other than that, we have realized that there are other interesting receptors that are involved actually in creating the experience, that are imidazolin 1 and imidazolin 2, as well as the NMDA, which are, these are actually what we are also working on. But just to share with you, I guess to me, harmaline is the golden compound. And I can share a little bit more with you about that, especially from the work of Claudio Naranjo. So Claudio Naranjo has a chapter in his book about harmaline and collective unconscious. So harmaline takes you to collective unconscious. What is collective unconscious? Collective unconscious is where you basically dive into and you receive information that you don't know where they come from or what they are, mostly. And like I want to take you through this and my own experience a little bit. Like basically just he refers to this as a physical relaxation. It brings you physical relaxation, you know, the numbness in the feeling of extremities. So when your eyes are closed, you see visions that are not like, these are not geometry. These are like very vivid pictures. You know, this is another distinction. And like back to his patients, there is this sense of like the aha moment that the patients has. Like they immediately know something. They immediately get to know something about the truth of themselves. You know, and that's the epiphany that comes, you know, with Harmaline. So many of his patients, they get this, you know, spontaneous like psychological improvement without any analysis of the source of the pathology of why, you know, why this happened to me or why that not happened to me. And then he relates to the consciousness of transpersonal experiences, which is where the dreams come before language or pictures or, you know, anything that we are sharing actually. So they are less hallucinogenic, but it gives you deeper sense of introspection. So this is another difference. And the interesting part is that, and this is actually coming from shamanic practices, that you get better with practice. So with that, this is a quote from one of his patients. So this is a patient that after 5 years of psychoanalysis, he didn't have any improvement. And he gets the intravenous injection of Harmaline, and after 5 minutes, this is what he says. It's unbelievable. Everything I do, everything I say is a distortion. I have been living for years without suspecting what I really am. I must have forgotten as a child, and only now can I feel myself again, my real self. So this is the healing experience after 5 minutes. So another researcher is actually Callaway, J.C. Callaway, which actually has a very interesting theory, which is like about the methylation of some of the beta-carbolines and the cycle of REM sleep, you know, which basically he goes through on how this dreamlike state is actually provoked, you know, in your brain, that like it can go on, and specifically when closer to getting, so we see most of these vivid dreams when it's closer to waking up. So, and that is when, you know, you have the longest REM experience. And that's where like basically the cycle of chemistry, biochemistry that's happening in our brain. So with that, I want to share a little bit about my own experience with Harmine and Harmaline. So we have been like testing this for a long time. So my subjective experience is very interesting. With Harmine, so I never, even on ayahuasca, I've never had any visual. So yeah, so this has been like, I've never seen anything. I've never seen, you know, any light, any geometry. But I see perception of images, like a sequence of events that's happening. You know, with this, you know, it was very interesting that I could just see very vivid images that was coming in front of my eye. It was so real that I was even opening my eye to see that if it's real or not. You know, and this was the experience. The Harmaline was very different. Harmaline, there was no image. Harmaline is actually like the sense of, for me, it was like sense of something that is present, but I can't communicate with. And I'm really curious about, like when you're talking about this subject, you know, that, for example, like under ayahuasca, people are seeing the same thing, even if they're not Mesoamerican. Is this because there have been enough literature and culture and memory and art created like on a very continuous basis around that this is, you know, being shared now as part of our unconscious and collective unconscious? And when it comes to haoma, there is this big absence, so that we don't have that content. That's why we can't really dive into what is the unconscious. So with that, I want to also like to talk a little bit about the Vishtaspian Mang, which there were two of the kings actually who took the Vishtaspian Mang. And this is addition of scopolamine, basically coming from, you know, the Hyoscyamus niger, which is black henbane, and they're all like anti-muscarinic. And what the receptors that they're bind to are acetylcholine receptors as an antagonist. And this again now brings this sense of deliriance, so you don't remember what you saw. So it's kind of like, imagine the dreamlike state, at the same time you don't remember, you know, like part of your memory. So this is the Vishtaspian Mang. So with that, my concluding note is like, first of all, this was not one plant. This was an extract. This is exactly like ayahuasca. We know that what is the main compound. So I believe that the main compound, as following the Flattery and Schwartz, research, that the main compound has been Peganum harmala. That's why it stayed in Iran. It has, like the experience is very similar to the experience of dreamlike. It's very similar to the experience of ayahuasca, but the priests, they knew exactly what to give to in each situation. It was not like just one concoction. It was not one formulation. So they were adding different additives in different cases. For example, in the Vishtaspian case, they added the henbane. There are like, some of the additives could be, ephedra, or it could be henbane. So as part of this work, I actually approached Flattery, David Flattery, who is like, I guess maybe he's in like late 80s, and it was very amazing for me that he's still working on this. And they're actually publishing a new version of the whole haoma and harmaline for the next year. And just 2 days ago, actually, he sent me the latest version of the translation of our Martin Schwartz, which was coming on my text, that he's actually, this is a translation of a word called mohrem, which is, according to him, is actually related to the diarrhea of the haoma drinking priests. So the priests, they were coming, with vomiting and diarrhea. So it was not like they were sleeping for 7 days. It's exactly the experience is very similar to haoma experience. So back to Esfand of today's Iran. So as you see, the Esfand is everywhere. They bring it to the president, former president, like even in the mosques, they're burning it. When they're welcoming, they're in the streets of Tehran, like when they are just going to, as homelesses, they're burning it for people. This is actually my Haft scene, which is from the New Year. It's just like we're putting it as part of one of the elements of our New Year, just to bring, again, sacredness for us. They're burning it in weddings, the bride and groom, and it's very widely used, in today's Iran. So I'm going to close my presentation with 2 discussions, and these are like just food for thoughts. And so one is about basically a quote coming from Herodotus, that Persian rulers had a way of administration of the truth. At least if we refer that to before, like Achaemenid, dynasty, which there was the rise of Iranian empire, and with that, referred to when Cyrus actually, for example, one of the examples is when Cyrus, just frees the Babylonia, and then what he does is that, like, just at the least, like, there's no blood. He comes, takes over, and then he frees all the slaves. He let the Jews to come back to Jerusalem. He actually set up a racial equality like system, among this. And as you see, this is very interesting. It's kind of the state of the mind of the Iranian, at least ruler at that point. It seems that like there is a registration to a level of ethics, at least, So, and then based on that, I just looked for if they were using haoma. So we know that Vishtas was given haoma, like out of the caste of the Magi, like there were kings who were taking this. And it's very interesting that there is this account that they're saying that the Iranian rulers, they were taking haoma once per year in the new year. So, and could basically an intoxicant be a source of, a different way of thought, or a registration to a different, like, ethical way of ruling, let's say, if you specifically compare it, with today's politicians. So with that, again, I want to take you back to where was the rise of Iranian, specifically like around culture, architecture, art, etc. There are 3 areas: Achaemenid, Sassanid, and Safavid. So if we assume that like the first one, there were like the rulers and magi, they were taking haoma, and the second one also, like these are this is the time that there was Zoroastrian in Iran. There was actually another area which is after Islam, which nobody talks about, and that's the area that actually they were using other compounds. Yeah. So the rise of Iran is actually kind of is laying over the use of botanicals, as you see. And especially today, if this can be another solution for future, that would be that would be very interesting. And my last slide, this is about like now that we're actually stepping into designing a psychotherapy program for the use of psychedelics, who is going to be a psychotherapist? Is it important that a psychotherapist is also a righteous person? Is a person who is who is not actually channeling evil? Who is not like a person who has the capacity of the soul that puts you in a state that is in a better state? I guess there are a lot of conversation about like training, for the psychotherapist, etc. But what is the direction? So this is a very interesting area. And the last point is, as a drug discovery company, the question is that like, what a state of mind are we optimizing for? So this is where the whole piece would happen. Like as we get our psyche toward a state of an optimized state, there's going to be less and less diversity in the way that we are thinking, and like more peace and more understanding in the world. So this is also an ethical question on how we can take this further. So with that, I want to thank David Flattery. I actually went to California to meet him in person. Like, he is such an inspiring person. Like, you can't believe, like, he has published a book 40 years ago, but he remembers every line with every footnote, and he was present for every time I called him, for asking a question, and like, he was just working with me closely, just sending more information, etc. And he was a very close friend to Claudio Naranjo. The only picture on his wall was like Claudio Naranjo's book, and it was the most beautiful library that I went and visited. And actually, this is the work, Harmel, that we actually took a picture in front of that. And with that, so this is my references, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Let's open the floor for questions. Right over here.
That was brilliant, thank you. I was just intrigued as to the preparation method for the Pagan Harmala.
You mean the extract? Or?
Yeah, how do they take it?
Oh, how you take it?
And like what plant part, these sorts of questions.
Yeah, so I don't recommend taking it because it also has other compounds that might come, as toxic. So, but yeah, the extract, the active compounds are very different thing.
Yes, thank you. That was really, really interesting. Have you eaten Amanita Muscaria?
No, I haven't tested them.
I have, multiple times, and Amanita pantherina, and I can assure you that you do remember the experience. So I want to just make that suggestion to you.
Yeah.
And
so this is very interesting. Like I haven't had the chance to have access to Amanita yet, but I even I was talking to David, and he was saying that like he has taken so much, like he was given by like different friends, that he also didn't feel anything, after just so many times of trying. It's it's very case dependent, but if you take beta carbolene, you are going through that experience of dream, like you are just like, you have to lie down, after.
Well, I can assure you, if you take a lot of Amanita Muscaria, you're going to feel the experience.
Okay.
It takes about...
But do I remember it after?
Yeah, it takes about an hour and a half before it comes on. And there's very bizarre characteristics, one of which is repetitive motion syndrome. You can't, when you think something, you act it. So I have lots of stories on that. And there is a somniferous aspect to it at the end, where you are put into a deep, death-like sleep. And I don't remember when I was unconscious what I was dreaming. But as I slipped into unconsciousness, I thought, this is death. And just before I ended an Einsteinian thought of paradigm-shifting implications, there was a prepositional or adverbial tangent. And so I never came to the conclusion of my thoughts. And I thought, death is a perpetuation of inconclusive thoughts, of which any one of which would have been, life-changing, a spiritual epiphany. And so I saw that death as an incomplete spiritual journey that was peppered with adverbial and prepositional phrases. Anyhow, that was my experience. So.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing, Paul.
Next.
Is there a button I should press? Or, okay. So when you took the Amanita Muscaria, did you take the pure chemical or did you take the actual?
No, these are like in a very basically medical setting. These are all API, so
Okay.
we know exactly what it is. So there is no taking seed, like
Yes.
not taking any of the seeds. Yeah.
Because I have had the misfortune of taking a Pagan Paganism tea before. You throw up a lot. And you do get quite sick.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Next.
What was when you took pure harmaline, what was the dose? What was the dose of the pure compound that you took?
Yeah, I think it was about like between 100 to 200 milligram.
Okay. And the duration was not 7 days, I hope.
No, it's not actually, the half-life is not that long, but I am the person that every time I throw up on that. Like, there are people that they never throw up, but the real experience for me is just like being uncomfortable, and then specifically like usually what I do is that I meditate over it, and then at some point of my meditation is like, then you have to run, and then the real trip starts, and then from there, I have had between kind of like 4 to 8 hours.
The gentleman who took Amanita Muscaria, I couldn't see who was talking. But my question is, was it dried in a particular way, or was it fresh?
My Muscaria experiences were fresh, they were delicious. And then my Pantherina experience was freeze-dried prairie. And that experience is, if we have storytelling night, I've got a story.
Okay, thank you.
Next question.
Now, as I understand it, Iran, there is plenty of psilocybin, and it's one of the first places that we know that they had psilocybin. I mean, this is a question. And why wouldn't that have been part of the Zarathustrian tradition in itself?
Well, I was never aware of psilocybin in my life, except then when I was in the West. I'm not like I have read, specifically the work of trance, of relating to. There is enough mushrooms today because there is a psychedelic community there, but I was never aware of use of any psilocybin mushroom in Iran, and I don't think that anybody knows that there was. So yeah, I don't know like where that account is coming from for your referral, but as an Iranian, like I spent like my first 20 years in Iran, and I never knew about this.
Well, I defer to your
Short question,
Yeah.
and forgive me if you mentioned this before. What was the dose that you took of what of either the harmine and the?
Well, like as part of our study, we have done a lot of different doses, and this is between 100 to 200 milligrams, and this is just like kind of like 99% or 95% API. Yeah, but it's just something because like most of you are like either have experience. This is a question for me because when I took harmaline, I like as an Iranian, I really like to have this connection to the dreams and like the collective memory of the past Iran. And because I have no idea if what was the art, like what was the painting, what was like what I should just like connect to, it was very interesting. I had this feeling that there is something, but I cannot communicate. But from those of you who have had experience from ayahuasca, if there is anybody who is not South American and have had the experience of seeing tiger, serpents, Pachamama, or like, is it just because you're told about these stories, or are you really like seeing this because of like diving into the unconscious of these people? And for me, it's very interesting on how I can dive into the unconscious of people of that region, because I guess part of the healing for people who are just fighting from each side is actually coming from working on that area, or just working on their myth, that if we can come up with a common myth for most of the people, then they can just build on top of that.
Hi, thank you for your talk and for sharing the wisdom of Iran. It's really, really beautiful, and I love your presentation. I've worked with harmine and harmaline for many years, with hundreds of doses.
Wow.
So I'm really curious as to what the haoma was, like how many, whether it was a seed that they brewed up, which I'm guessing it was, and whether you know how much they used. And then with the doses, I've worked with 50 to 250, and I've seen a huge variety of reactions to that. So that's why it's not quite sitting with me, and I'm not quite understanding. So I'd just like to, whether you could just share a little bit more maybe about the original haoma.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that there is a lot, like nobody knows what was, like all this speculation is based on, the stories, like the texts that are available, or the feeling. My own understanding is most probably has been a beta carbolene. So, and because of the dreamlike state, and because that you have the memory of what they have gone through, it's exactly like everybody's ayahuasca. Like people who are taking ayahuasca, they can just tell you from the first moment to the last moment of all the images that they have seen. Or some people they don't, Yeah, I'm one of those that I don't remember. But about the dose, I have no idea. There's nothing, about the dose or about. These are just these texts about like the feeling, or or like the start, for example, like just spreading out. What is the spreading out? Like I have had that under harmaline, so I feel that it's spreading out too. Yeah, I don't think you're gonna. I can tell you that like I've gone through all the papers. Like it's a lot of work. And everything is just like, I brought everything, into probably a few drops as part of my presentation.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Thank you. Final questions?
Thank you.
One over here.
Quick one. I may have missed this. Did the name haoma have a meaning?
Haoma means to press out.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically they were putting the seeds or whatever the botanical was, and then they put it in a mortar and pestle, and they were just like hammering it out, to take the extract, and then they take it through a filter. So these are all happening like 2,500 years ago as well. Like the filter, everything is part of that, and then the extract is haoma.
So it has a strict meaning. It isn't just a simple name.
Haoma. No, I think it's
have you extrapolated that you think that that's what
it
its
comes
meaning
from?
is?
They are saying that it comes from soma. When it came to Iran, like soma became haoma. Yeah.
Okay. If you take the word and repeat it in one long line, it's more like a chant, or it could be pronounced differently. Home.
Yeah. Yeah, these are like the lots of many years of history that you have to dig to see where was the source. But soma is definitely related to the Vedic hymn, that they were just chanting it, But we don't have chanting in Iran, at least part of the Zoroastrian. The Zoroastrian they don't have the chanting. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.